All right, students, welcome to week 8 of CCJ 241. Hopefully you're realizing by now you definitely need to watch all the videos because the videos are going to have important information for your exams on there. But we're getting close to the end, so let's go where we're at. Ending on Sunday of last week, you took exam number 3, and now we're on week 8. We're on police discretion, ethics, and accountability. This week is going to be chapters 10 and 11 in your book, as well as all of these links. Do not forget to look at the articles, the videos. Questions do come from those on your exams, as well as 4 videos that I've put on, because we're talking about ethics and morals of cops. So this is where cops have gone bad, your rotten apples. We have a video on 5 cops murder, the Freddie Gray case in Baltimore, the Rodney King story. Just a bad video of where an officer makes a bad choice, in my opinion. These are your videos that you have to watch. This is obviously number 1, and this reviews chapters 10 and 11, as well as the review that I'm going over now. This week, there's only an extra credit opportunity. I'd like to review this really quickly. Basically, this is due this Sunday. You can pick pretty much any area departments. They can be in Northern California, anywhere in Oregon. And you want to answer these 4 questions. First of all, the first question, I just want to explain this so that you understand, is what type of crime scene investigator does that department have? So if you're investigating Ashland Police Departments, I can almost guarantee you that you're not going to find this on the internet. You're going to have to call the department. And generally you ask to speak to somebody that's a detective because you want to find out, and by CSI what I mean is the person who collects fingerprints, takes photographs at a homicide scene, collects blood, takes DNA samples, processes fingerprints through chemical processes, takes gunshot residue kits, all the things like on the CSIs that you see. So generally a lot of departments, their detectives will do that preliminarily, but I want to know who does it on big scenes such as homicide scenes. And generally you have CSIs, or they're called a forensic unit. I want to know what their names are, and then you have to answer these questions. I did put here only departments in Oregon, but if you have a close department such as Wairika, things like that, I'll take those as well. You need to note where you got the information. There were some people that were putting that they got the information off the internet. I checked those and they were not correct information. So you can get up to 40 points of extra credit, which can really help make up some points on some of the exams, but you really need to make sure that it's correct. And generally for most answers, you're going to have to call and talk to the department, so don't wait till the last minute. All right, next week we are going to be going into week number 9. And once we go into week number 9, it's going to be on technology and the police, and you will take your 4th exam. There's going to be another extra credit opportunity. All right, let's get into chapter number 10 today. That's number 11, but we're going to start out with chapter number 10. And chapter number 10 really goes into discretion, ethics, and accountability in policing. All right, we're going to start off with biased enforcement and racial profiling. A lot of departments have come under scrutiny for biased enforcement practices. Starting in New Jersey in 1988, they started actually collecting data on it, and they did an analysis of 42,000 cars of officers that were involved in doing car stops. And they found that there was little or no difference concerning the frequency and type of traffic violations committed by black or white motorists. Approximately 73% of the motorists stopped and arrested were black. Only about 13% of the vehicles involved in the stops had a black driver or passenger. Blacks drove or occupied about 13% of the vehicles in question, but accounted for 35% of the total number of traffic stops. The complaints from the minority citizenry were so numerous that the ACLU posted an online complaint form and questionnaire on the internet in order to compile some stats. And currently, also, each state and federal government have adopted laws requiring the collection of reporting data that has to do with traffic stops, tickets that are issued, driver searches, so that officers have to back up what they're doing to ensure that bias-based and racial profiling is not occurring. Public perception of bias-based enforcement are not limited to minority communities in this country. The Gallup organization conducted numerous national polls addressing these issues and found that 59% of adults surveyed, regardless of their race or ethnicity, believe that racial profiling is widespread, and in addition, 81% of the respondents disapproved of the practice. In order to control this form of police misconduct, which it is, if a cop pulls somebody over because of their color, it's not right, and it is against the law under basically a federal code, Title 18 of the United States Code, which is a federal law. And police officers, not only with how they're hired, the departments are looking not to hire someone who's going to be racial profiling, but officers also attend sensitivity training normally, annually. This type of racial profiling occurs in practice when officers stop citizens solely based on their skin color or other identifiable racial or ethnic characteristics. Most observers, including most police officers, would agree that racial profiling is unacceptable. Yet there are a certain number of officers who continue to engage in such practices. I call those your rotten apples. The proportion of officers involved in such practices is very small, but all officers should be aware that taking official action based solely on race is unacceptable and grounds of disciplinary action, and in these days they are terminated. Police officers often respond to calls from public concerning suspicious persons, and in some cases these calls are based on the observation of suspicious behaviors, but in others the only thing suspicious about the person is their race. And so the dispatchers have to work really hard to make sure that they're not sending officers out on a call because somebody calls in, and just because of the color of a person they're sending an officer out on that. So the training takes place not only with the officers but with the dispatchers, trying to ask questions of the callers that are calling in. If an officer involved in situation of this type choose to stop and question the so-called suspicious persons, allegations of racial profiling or discrimination may be expected. Blacks and Hispanics are not the only potential targets of racial profiling. Following the events of 9/11, when in New York the Twin Towers were bombed, federal agents swept through Arab, Muslim, and South Asian neighborhoods throughout the country, snatching men from sidewalks as well as from their homes, workplace, and mosques. Lengthy incarceration of innocent individuals, coupled with verbal and physical abuse, did little to encourage the cooperation from the Middle Eastern community in preventing future acts of terrorism. So, encouraging ethical behavior. As long as cops have discretion, we're going to have to control. There's going to be racial profiling that might occur, and therefore departments have to be aware of that. According to Manning in 1978, the police occupational subculture emphasizes the following assumptions. So basically, cops are trained that people are not to be trusted and that people can kill you. Like, for example, if you go on a car stop, somebody could shoot you just because you're a cop. Personal experience is a better action guide than abstract rules. So if you go out in a certain neighborhood and you pull over suspects and they fight you and run, then sometimes cops will think in that neighborhood that's all that's going to happen if that's all that does happen to them. Officers must make the public respect them, and everyone hates a cop. So these are just some assumptions. There's some more. The legal system is untrustworthy, and basically what they mean by that is cops will see somebody, let's say, do a drug buy, and then they see that person out on the street, found innocent the next day, so they don't always believe in the legal system. People must be controlled and they will break the law because that's what they respond to. Police officers must appear respectable and be effective. They can most accurately identify crime and criminals, and the basic jobs of cops are to prevent crime and enforce law, and that more severe punishment will deter crime. The consequences of these assumptions, if carried over to the realm of police discretion, can lead to the following behaviors: ignoring abstract rules and principles, resorting to the threat of force or use of force to make the public show respect for police officers, displaying paranoid behavior, using street justice, preferring efficiency over effectiveness, regarding non-enforcement tasks as less than real police work, and adding charges when making arrests in order to try and ensure that some punishment or more severe punishment will result. And what's really bad about all of these is bad things can happen. For example, in adding charges, the law is really great in respect that there were times I actually received training that when an officer would respond, for example, to a Walmart and somebody had stolen a DVD player that was $100. Well, if the cop could prove that that person entered that Walmart with the intent to steal, they could charge them with burglary. Well, some cops were not only charging them with burglary, but were charging them with larceny or theft. And those criminals got great defenders, and they were basically, they would plead guilty to the misdemeanor theft, and they would have to throw out the burglary because you can't charge someone with the same crime twice. So a lot of these things that cops have on assumptions can lead to bad behaviors. All right, we're going to stop here on improving practices, hiring practices, on how to not hire cops that have bad ethics and morals, and we'll continue on with video 2.